Businesses in the US are bracing for higher taxes. But what does the Biden administration's tax plan actually mean for you and the economy? You see, when taxes are high, businesses often feel the pinch and they might decide it's not worth it to stay open. And that affects the economy. There's even a study that shows higher tax rates lead to fewer businesses operating formally and less private investment overall. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not against paying taxes. In fact, I'm really in support of taxes as long as those taxes go towards things that seem worthwhile in return, okay? So with that in mind, here are my thoughts on the recent tax changes and why I believe they might end up hurting the economy more than helping it. Side note, if you're wondering what's going on with the economy, with inflation, crypto, US-China relations, wars, etc., I created a course that unpacks these in simple terms so you can feel empowered. And for a limited time, I'm giving it away 100% free. So click the link below, and if this video adds value to you, all I ask is that you smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on the notifications, because it really helps this channel. Now, let's dive in. Number one, adjusting capital gains tax rates. You may have heard of capital gains taxes, but maybe you don't understand what it means. Simply put, this is the percentage you give to the government out of the profits you make from any capital investment. And capital investment is fancy for non-labor, meaning you didn't work for it directly. So stocks, crypto, real estate, private business ownership, all of those equal capital gains. Now let's break down how capital gains taxes currently work and what the proposed changes could mean for investors like you and me. Right now, capital gains taxes are divided into short-term and long-term categories. If you hold an investment for under a year, any profits you make are taxed at the same tax rate as your regular income. So for example, if you earn $100,000 a year from your job and earned an additional $20,000 in short-term capital gains, you'd pay 24% federal income tax on those gains, plus any applicable state taxes. And that would be the exact same tax rate, 24%, that you pay on the $100,000 you earn at your job. For long-term capital gains, where you hold the investment for longer than a year, the rates are much more favorable. Here's a breakdown. If you're single and earn under $47,000 a year, you pay zero capital gains. Cha-ching. If you earn between $47,000 and $518,000 a year, you pay a 15% capital gains tax. And if you earn over $518,000 in a year, you pay a 20% capital gains tax, plus an additional 3.8% net investment tax on anything above $1 million. So this means that theoretically, if you lived in a state with no income tax, you could sell $100 million worth of long-term investments and only pay around 23.8% in taxes, which is significantly lower than the tax bracket for earning over $1 million at that level. Okay. Now, there's a new proposal to increase the capital gains tax rate to over 44% for families making over $1 million a year. This rate doesn't even include state taxes. In California, for instance, the combined rate would reach 59%, meaning the government would take more of your investment profits than you do. Let that sink in for a moment. That's crazy. So here's why this is a concern. First, I think this proposal might be a negotiation tactic to make a lower rate like 28 or 32% seem like a sweet deal. But regardless of the final rate, here's why I believe these changes are problematic. And again, I'm not against paying taxes. In fact, I support paying my fair share as long as it's a reasonable and fair amount. But the money invested has already been taxed when you earned it, okay? So taxing it again when you make a profit, to me, feels like double taxation. You've already paid taxes on the initial amount that you invested. That was after tax. So taxing the growth at such high rates, it just seems unfair. And I believe generating wealth shouldn't be punished. If someone chooses to invest their money instead of spending it on low tax rate things like you go on a vacation or luxury bags, things like that, the person who invests is taking a risk because investments can go to zero after all. If they do well, they shouldn't be hit with a massive tax bill. Risk taking and forward thinking need to be rewarded, not penalized. I understand that if someone grows an investment from $1,000 to $10 million, the government might want to share for creating a stable environment where such growth is possible. I get that. But taxing those gains at rates comparable or higher than regular income tax rates, that's just excessive. Wealth generation should be encouraged, not hindered. While I'm all for paying taxes, the proposed capital gains tax hike feels like a punishment for those who invest their money and take risks. To those new to my channel, it might seem like just some other middle-aged white dude complaining about taxes. I come from a background of growing up on welfare and in an underprivileged community. I know what it's like to start with nothing and work hard towards a better future. This perspective is about ensuring everyone has a fair shot at building wealth. And if you think it ends here, the next proposal is even more crazy. Proposal 2, erasing tax cuts of 2018. Starting in 2018, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act lowered tax brackets across the board, allowing many workers to take home more money. However, a new proposal aims to eliminate these tax cuts entirely to address perceived inequalities from the previous administration and to raise additional revenue. I believe this reversal is unnecessary, primarily because these changes are set to expire in 2025. A few percentage points difference in tax rates isn't a significant burden, in my opinion. It's frustrating that the benefits of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act are often misunderstood. Contrary to popular news headlines and beliefs, lower income brackets benefited more from these cuts than higher ones. Most people earn less than $150K a year, and this group saved the most from what is often labeled a rich person tax cut. Repealing these cuts will impact the poor and the middle class more than higher income earners. Data supports this. That's not my opinion or speculation. Am I against the adjustment? Considering that the current tax cuts, they're set to expire next year and need to be renewed or revised, I'd advocate for renewal. Why? Because these cuts help the middle class, the working class, and the lower income groups far more than the upper middle class and the wealthy. If the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is eliminated entirely, all tax brackets will increase, affecting everyone, not just high earners. For instance, the tax rate cut was 3% for those earning just over $9,500 to $82,500 a year. And as someone who's earned less than $30 to $40K a year, the 3% increase will be felt, especially with inflation. Look at the data and you'll see how you might be affected. While I'm not against paying taxes, I oppose tax changes that disproportionately hurt the lower and middle classes. These proposed changes seem more about political positioning than actual economic improvements. If it's a choice between renewing the current tax cuts or reverting to the old system, I vote to renew them and continue benefiting those who need it most. Now, number 3, my take on 25% tax on unrealized capital gains. I think the proposal to tax unrealized capital gains seems silly and more like a political stunt than a practical policy. It's designed to rile people up against the evil rich and probably score some votes during election season, if I'm being honest. Implementing this tax would require a ton of resources and would likely face serious legal challenges since the Supreme Court already ruled such measures unconstitutional. Okay, so let's break down what unrealized actually means and why it's a tricky area for taxes. Unrealized gains are essentially paper profits. Okay, they haven't turned into actual cash. Think of it like Monopoly money. All right, many people don't realize that the ultra rich don't have piles of cash sitting around like Scrooge McDuck. Okay, their wealth is tied up in assets like their companies. This is just like you having a home with $200,000 in equity. Unless you refinance to access that equity, it's just a number on a spreadsheet, right? You can't use it to buy groceries or go on a vacation or even fix up your home. Taxing unrealized gains every year is frankly, it's just ridiculous, okay? And here's what it could look like in practical terms. Imagine your home value goes up by $50,000 a year. You'd owe $12,500 in taxes the first year. And if it increases again by $50K the next year, another $12,500. You haven't sold your home, okay? So you haven't made any actual money yet. You still owe the taxes. Now imagine owning a business that increases in value by $100K and a home by $50K. You'd owe the government $37,500 that year in taxes. Where's the money supposed to come from? Now, the government proposes this tax. I understand why, and it's because people will often borrow against their assets, which isn't taxed. That borrowing is not taxed. When you refinance your home, you're not taxed on the borrowed amount. This applies to both middle-class individuals and billionaire business owners. Borrowing against assets is often more advantageous than selling the item and paying the taxes itself. And in my opinion, the tax code should address what it truly aims to fix rather than positioning this as a tax on billionaires who are too wealthy, while including someone who earns $450,000 a year. Okay, do that math. There's a lot of zeros between 450,000 and billionaires. Don't believe headlines. Again, this is just political theater, and I'm against all forms of it from all sides, angles, and opinions. Taxing unrealized gains is problematic for several reasons. Number one, it's unprecedented and unconstitutional. If you make a $1,000 investment that grows to $5,000, you're not taxed on the $4,000 profit until you sell because the value could decline. This proposal wants to tax unrealized gains on wealth over 100 million, which is impractical and would force people to sell assets just to pay the tax. Then there are valuation challenges. The proposal requires annual reporting of asset values, including non-tradable assets like art and real estate. These assets would be valued based on their cost basis and adjusted annually by the 5-year treasury rate, plus 2 percentage points, making the process complex and burdensome. Finally, the narratives are misleading. Claims that wealthy Americans pay lower tax rates than firefighters or teachers often include unrealized gains in the calculation, and that skews the comparison. The reality is that 1% of Americans pay 42% of all taxes. Taxing unrealized gains at 25% would mean significant annual payments, even if no assets are sold. While the proposal to tax unrealized gains might seem like a way to target the ultra wealthy, it's full of practical and legal issues. It's an impractical tax that could lead to unintentional consequences and a massive waste of taxpayer resources. Instead of engaging in political theatrics, I think it's best to focus on fair and effective tax policies. Number 4, capping the 1031 exchange at $500,000. I support the idea of making housing more affordable for Americans, but capping the 1031 exchange at $500,000 could lead to many unintended consequences. And here's what I think. This policy could reduce home turnover. Limiting the 1031 exchange, it would make investors less likely to sell properties as their profits would be taxed if they exceeded $500,000. Currently, the 1031 exchange allows property owners to defer paying taxes on capital gains if they reinvest the proceeds into a more expensive property. This encourages frequent buying and selling, keeping the housing market active. Without this incentive, investors might hold on to properties longer. When they hold on to a property longer, it reduces the number of homes available for sale. This could negatively impact working class Americans by decreasing jobs in home remodeling and construction. Another consequence of this policy could be a decline in home quality. With fewer homes being flipped and improved, builders might cut corners to maximize profits. If the value of homes is capped at $1 million before additional taxes kick in, builders may be less motivated to build high quality homes. Over time, inflation would make a $500,000 house smaller and of lower quality, which then again leads to substandard structures within a decade as builders try to stay under this cap. Additionally, limiting the 1031 exchange would affect families who want to pass homes to their children from one generation to another. For example, if your parents bought a home for say $70,000 back in the 80s or something, and now it's worth say $750,000, the value over $500,000 of increase would be taxed. This de-incentivizes creating wealth for future generations. Families might choose to keep homes and rent them out instead of selling them, again, resulting in fewer homes on the market and higher rents. There are benefits to the current policy. Section 1031 of the tax code allows property owners to defer capital gains taxes by reinvesting in a more expensive property, which encourages continuous investment in real estate. A 2015 study found that 1031 exchanges did lead to more market liquidity and job creation in construction, real estate, and other building related industries. Potential negative impacts of capping a 1031 exchange. If the 1031 exchange is capped at $500,000, property owners might be less motivated to sell and invest in new properties, resulting in fewer home improvements and less economic activity. Investors might focus on smaller deals, increasing increasing competition in affordable homes and drive up the prices. Additionally, fewer property sales, it reduces the market turnover, pushing home prices higher and making it more profitable for owners to rent their property instead of selling them. While the intention behind capping the 1031 exchange is to target the wealthy and generate more tax revenue, the policy, I believe, could slow down the real estate market, reduce job creation, lower the quality of homes, and hinder families from building and transferring wealth. It's important to consider these potential impacts and focus on policies that address housing affordability without causing these negative side effects. Number 5, increasing corporate tax rates from 21% to 28%. As we face high inflation with rates between 4 to 8%, investors are pouring more money into companies to beat inflation, which in turn is putting pressure on the corporations to deliver profits above inflation. To maintain profitability, companies need to cut costs. So instead of absorbing the costs of higher minimum wages, healthcare, education, and all the other fancy benefits that companies offer nowadays, instead they'll seek profitability by improving efficiency, which often means laying off workers and replacing them with the onslaught of coming automations and AI. The working class has relied on traditional methods like unionizing and exerting power through numbers, but they may face a harsh reality. If pushed too far, companies may replace entire workforces with 20% new workers and 80% automation and AI. While I support the working class, it's crucial to acknowledge this potential shift in the workforce. Now let's consider raising corporate taxes. The additional 7% tax increase will need to be sourced from somewhere, and labor costs are historically the largest expense for companies. As we enter an era where humans can be replaced by machines, we gotta consider the broader economic implications. That's a lot of fancy words, okay? If corporate taxes rise to 28%, corporations might look for ways to cut costs, and labor is an obvious target. The pressure to maintain or increase profitability in an inflationary environment, coupled with advancements in AI and automation, means companies may increasingly opt for technology solutions over human labor. And that leads to significant job displacement. Now, don't get afraid here, okay? Because while many jobs will be replaced, new opportunities will also be created. And this requires a different set of skills and training. And workers must adapt and evolve with the changing landscape, embracing lifelong learning and acquiring new skills that align with future workforce demands. Raising corporate tax rates to 28% might seem reasonable, but we must be cautious of its potential impact in the context of AI and automation. The extra tax burden on corporations could accelerate the shift towards automation, leading to significant job displacement. Therefore, it's crucial to balance tax policies with measures that support workers, retraining, and educating, ensuring that the workforce can adapt to new economic realities. And if you think that these are far, far in the future, I personally think within the next decade, we are going to see a huge shift. And so the power of the individual, like you and I, if we're working for someone instead of owning our own business, which is always the best, our power dramatically is reducing by the day if we work for someone else. What's my overall take on taxes, taxing the rich, and taxation in America? I think the federal government is raising taxes for some pretty concerning reasons. First off, they've printed a shit ton of money. Technically speaking, that's what it is. Okay? And that has massively increased the national debt. And to handle just the interest on this debt, they need more revenue, and taxes are the go-to solution. This excessive money printing has devalued the currency, leading to inflation. Inflation hits the poor and the middle class the hardest by reducing their purchasing power. But instead of addressing this issue, tax proposals often make it seem like people's financial struggles are due to not earning enough rather than the devaluation of money. And the truth is, it often can be both. Another thing is that taxes fund military operations, and I'm all about defending okay? But these wars which benefit certain US companies and interests, and then the money comes back into the economy and props up the economy. But instead of pouring money into wars, why aren't we investing more into our country? We need more entrepreneurship training, small business funding, and solutions to domestic issues. Over my lifetime, I have seen a decline in various aspects of the American life, and I do not support this ongoing trend. And if we redirected even a small percentage of funds from, in my opinion, the military-industrial complex to domestic investments instead, it could really boost economic growth and improve the quality of life for all Americans. The government also needs to get a handle on inflation and its spending, making sure the value of money stays stable through smart fiscal policies. That means accountability, Washington, and better regulation of the money supply. Plus, an independent audit of government spending would help identify wasteful expenditures and areas where we could be more efficient. $15,000 toilet seats, anyone? Transparency and accountability are key to making sure our tax dollars are used effectively. So, while I'm not against paying taxes, I want to see them used in ways that genuinely benefit we, the people of the United States, not just to cover up the government's financial missteps, polarize the American people, and fund endless wars. While I support paying taxes, like many Americans, I'm concerned about the current motivations and uses for tax revenue. Addressing these issues and being held accountable on spending from both sides of the aisle can help ensure tax revenue is used in ways that genuinely benefit all Americans. If you're watching this still, here's a high five, what up, from me to you. Grab the course that's free for a limited time, and down below, link below, smash the like, subscribe with notifications turned on. Watch this next video wherever it is, and most importantly, you keep living your life to the fullest. I'll see you on the next video. Peace.